And you wonder where the humanity went.
Within the first 5 minutes, it feels normal. And that's the creepiest part about this movie.
Oh, it's horrible. Hi, I'm Teresa. Welcome to Cocoon Cast, where we deep dive into movies and discuss all things cinema.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. Today we will be discussing the new movie, Zone of Interest.
Rebecca, let's get started.
Rudolf Haas is well known in his community for being a strong leader, but within his close circle, he's seen as a father figure worthy of respect. But when his line of work starts to encroach on his family life negatively, his wife Hedwig threatens to uproot his status. Will Rudolf continue to follow the path he once embraced without caution, or will he have to change himself to keep things the same?
Finally, this movie.
We've been seeing trailers for this for about 4 to 5 months, and it felt like I was going to have to see this until after the award season shows.
And funny how it is, right? Oscars bring movies closer. We could never find a time to see this movie close enough. Right time, nothing. And this movie needs to be seen. World War II. Poland. Right next to horrible things that are happening to people.
For a cinema community who doesn't understand the setting, we're going to give you a picture. This takes place in a house that's next to a very prominent place in Poland where some very horrible things happened.
Literally, this is a family home. This is a German family that lives there. A German commander who in World War II is well esteemed, well respected by part of his country, part of his community, with his wife and his children. And you wonder where the humanity went.
Within the first 5 minutes, it feels normal. And that's the creepiest part about this movie.
Oh, it's horrible.
Not only do you have these shots almost establishing a dollhouse-like atmosphere, you have the characters being so casual about the atrocities that not only are being committed, but that they're benefiting from.
Oh, the benefiting, that's a great statement. Because the benefiting, if you know any parts of this history, I do think there's a little bit of blink and you'll miss it. Or if you don't know it, the depth of what it means is, as you said, it's a painful reality. And there's such a benefiting from it and a cavalier attitude around that. It's let's divide things up. Oh, let's use this. Oh, let me wear this.
Oh, I really wanted this. Oh, too bad I can't have it, but maybe I can. And it's just so ick.
It's sickening. It's sickening. But as you had said, it's the subtle aspect of it. And it's not overly graphic, even though it is. Meaning you were talking about the rating.
Yeah, I mentioned to you that it was a PG-13 before we saw it.
Correct. And some movies have received a darker rating or a higher rating like an R. Understandably, the content is very heavy, but I'm thinking at that age, had you been younger when this came out, we definitely would have taken you to this movie. This is such an important film to see.
I know we talked about this on the Golda review, but it's important to remember the history and how that impacts like our local communities and how we act in this day and age as well.
Correct. And based on a true story, based on a book.
To me, that took guts. Jonathan saw the original printing of Zone of Interest before it came out, and he's like, I want to make this film. Now, in the book, it's based off of this family that is being featured in the film.
Correct.
There's 3 diverging plot lines that also converge at various points. Jonathan said, basically, screw the subtext. We're making the real movie.
Which I appreciated. I know we've read articles. The grandson of the person featured, he was talking about his family in just denial. Literally defending, disregarding. And it was hard to find the redemptive quality, although I know you and I talked about one of his daughters showed up, Hedwig, his wife, her mother showed up, and it led to the conclusion once she understood what was happening, what was next door, that was happening, she packed up and she left.
The dissonance to me is interesting because there's almost these normal family moments
Yes.
that you see and you're like, maybe they're not crazy like psychos that we think that they are. And then all of a sudden something will snap you back to the reality that, yes, these people are evil and vile and vicious.
The main character clearly was his history. He goes on to do more horrible and dramatic things, is I think a word that I can use at this point. However, I think that's the creepiest part of all of this, because I think we do want to believe that people are all evil. And if they're all evil, we'll know it, we'll see it. Their kids won't love them, their wives won't love them. And there was a part where, he and his wife were very much in love. His wife wanted this beautiful garden. So it wasn't all evil. And I think, gosh, I think we want to go, oh, if you're all evil, then I'll know it and I'll run away and but that's not the case. There is humanity in this.
It also begs the question of what cost will you sacrifice yourself to create these dreams? One of the scenes that I loved in this movie was Hedwig, his wife,
Correct.
was talking about this dream that they had ever since they met when they were younger.
That's right. That's
that they
good.
wanted to be something more than the position in life that they were given. And now that they had this, but it was on the backs of everybody else.
And that's a great way to say it. It's on the backs of people that are not going to live through World War II. Their families will not live through World War II. It just will not happen. And there's a part where you go, oh my gosh, how selfish, how horrible. But Sandra Holler, right, Anatomy of Fall, wonderful actress, portrays this in a way where you understand it. You go, oh, I understand it. But at the same time, the film was incredible because it would show glimpses of what was happening over the fence. Sometimes that would come over into their space, but sometimes it was just in the distance. And I know you and I, we would watch it and we go, oh.
Because we know what's happening.
We know what's happening. And you wonder, how does she not know when they close the windows and the way you see the light and it's so, so clear?
But she does know. And that's the problem, is there are moments in the film where she's very viscerally aware of what's going on.
But what must she say to herself to not do anything different? And even when her husband is relocated,
she's still that person.
She wants to stay there because this is her home.
In fact, you see her almost act out on the people working in their home even more.
Yes, yes. You just think there's a certain part, and the word comfort is horrible, but there's almost a comfort if you go, oh, hey, this is a fictitious story. They've exaggerated. This isn't real. This never really happened. But the reality is every part of this movie really happened.
I think that's the part that disgusts me, but also makes this movie so powerful, is they're not watering anything down. They're not sugarcoating this. Jonathan did extensive interviews with people in this environment.
This is true.
And also people whose lives' work it is to study what happened in this environment.
That's correct. And there's a part at the end, we always laugh about the epilogue, but there is a part where it brings it modern day. And I think that was powerful, because if for some reason it didn't hit hard enough, or it didn't compel you enough to say, this is what happened, hopefully people will see that and say, it did. The evidence, the actual evidence is there in front of you.
One of the things that I really liked about this movie was that epilogue. But I think this epilogue succeeds because this movie is not beating you over the head with what happened. It's creeps. It's insidious. There's moments where Rudolph finds something in the river and he starts to realize, oh, this is coming closer to me. I don't want to have to deal with this. You see other characters like Hedwig's mom decide to leave once they realize the gravity of the situation.
That's correct. And the daughter, there's a redemptive part with the daughter. And it's interesting, his choice. It's not the same colorization. It's different. And she's sneaking out and she's helping people in a way where it's not, oh, as a family, we're going to help. It's she sneaks out, she takes her bike and she's kind of creeping around. She doesn't want anybody to know. because what could possibly happen to her?
Exactly. I read some of the historical documentation that the children wore things to keep them set apart so that they wouldn't be caught up in this, because it was so
I know what you're
easy
talking about.
to be caught up in this if you're in this environment.
Well, and the story is if they were to go next door, right, they had to wear like the little dog collars or the chains in metal. So they knew not to harm these children.
They were so concerned with just stamping out this way of life that anyone was fair game. And that
Correct.
just terrifies me because it's happening.
Yes.
It has happened. And hopefully it doesn't happen again, is the message that we take away from these movies.
Well, and that's the story of telling these stories, is so it would never happen again. Because you and I didn't live through that, right? My dad was born in 1935. How much he remembers as a child, minimal, right? He was in the United States. However, there's still a segment of our population that says, nah, not such a big deal. Nah, it didn't happen. That's crazy.
That angers me.
It should. It definitely should, because this movie, the screenplay was terrific. The acting was terrific. There was no part of that was not sincere or authentic in my mind.
This movie was also very respectful, so
I would agree with that. Do we have any questions from the box?
Most movies from this era start in the concentration camp and show the atrocities. Here, they filmed outside of it and basically stayed outside of it. Did you find that compelling, and did that keep your interest?
I found it compelling because part of me was curious to see if the world inside of the camp would come crashing into the world that was outside of it. From that perspective, it held my interest. I also was curious to see how far this family would refuse to acknowledge what was going on, and if they would acknowledge what was going on.
And that's so painful. That it really, I think, challenges each person to say, because what do people say? Oh, it's too far. It's in the distance. It's in the past. But I think every person wants to believe if it was that close, so many things were right in my face, literally, like we're talking about, I would not, I would believe it even if I was on the fence. It would be so crystal clear. And this family, it was that clear, and the father went even beyond his history, beyond this period in time, was horrible. It just continued to get worse. The mother continued to just hunker down, worse staying. And I think every person wants to believe, I would not allow this to happen. If I knew this was happening next door, I would do something. And very few people did. Do we have any other questions from the box?
Do you think the cinematography communicated what the director was trying to say and communicate?
When you watch the film, there's almost a doll's house-like perspective. It gives you literal and metaphorical distance away from the characters, so you can see things without having the emotional tie of, I'm in their face, I have to recognize their emotions. It forces you to focus on the actions of the characters. I think that serves this movie well.
I would agree with that. I think, however, there was some distracting moments to me. There was, when we came in, that you hear the music, and then I think it was the black screen at that point. And it went on, and you can say artistically, it was an uncomfortable time. However, I think it almost lent itself to, is there something wrong with the projection screen, unfortunately? And then there was a scene where it was all red, and obviously it's very intentional, I understand. But it almost felt as if it interrupted the flow of the movie.
I remember making a comment to you, it felt like a reel was missing.
Exactly. And I don't think that they would want it to interrupt the flow. I think they believe that it enhanced it. Maybe for some people, some movies, in my mind, the flow is what part of the powerful aspect of the movie was. Rebecca, it is that time of the show. We have 5 moths, 1 to 5. How would you rate this movie?
This is a 4-moth movie for me.
All right. Number 1 reason.
It's not a perfect movie. The issue that you raised with the missing real moments comes to mind. But it's pretty good at what it's setting out to do. You're not getting graphic visuals. a lot of the scariness comes from what's implied, and I think that makes it a much stronger movie.
All right, 1 to 5 for me. I would say it's 4 and a wing. I think the hard part is it's a really good movie. I think what may have been helpful is the people were nameless, faceless, meaning the people that were on the other side of the fence. They did show inside modern day what had happened in the respect of the wreckage that was left behind. I think it would have been very powerful if they would have either added some statistics in terms of what are the actual numbers. If you don't know the numbers, I think that would have been good. Or even because, we had talked about some movies start in an actual concentration camp. I think it could have been very powerful if they would have followed a family or a few people.
Something to parallel the journey that we're seeing on the outside.
Correct, because it was subtle. You would see a glimpse and then it would fade, a glimpse and then fade. And I think it could have been a little bit heavier at the end.
And it earned that for you.
And earned that, meaning they were telling the story in a subtle way. I appreciated that. That was fine. I believe it told the story well. But I think there's almost like a call to action too. It's what will you do with this information versus you see the person at the end and then it literally ends. And I'm just thinking call to action would have made it a 5 for me. And then tangible names of people versus a side profile of multiple frames of individuals. Stronger would have meant something to me.
That's fair. And I think that's a purely director's choice on that matter.
Absolutely. But I think that's the only thing that's keeping me from a 5. Thanks for joining us. We're always excited to create experiences to bring our cinema community together.
Watch the notifications for a review of the new movie, Argyle. Then come back to the channel this weekend for our weekly show, Movies and More, where we will have more movie reviews, the latest Hollywood news, and commentary with Snark, meant to amuse.
Please remember to like, subscribe, and to share our channel.
If you enjoyed this movie review, you might click the link to check out our review of Queen Rocks Montreal, or click the other link to watch last week's show where we review ISS.
Remember, cinema community movies are better together.
together.
Thanks for watching. See you in the next review.